afternoon. Uh, we're excited to hear Wendy's presentation, and we'll get to that in a second. I just want to remind everyone that we do have recordings of the presentation up on the SEMDA website at semda.net/webinars. So if you check out there, you'll find all of the previous ones we've had, as well as this one will get up, should be this afternoon without much problem. And of course, remind everyone that we have the SEMDA MedTech Conference here in a couple months in April here in the Atlanta area in Alpharetta, Georgia. So appreciate everybody joining again. I'd like to welcome Wendy. Thank you for joining us today, Wendy. Wendy has 25 years of experience working with Fortune 100 clients in areas of pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device, animal and consumer healthcare, international nonprofit organizations, and growing entrepreneurial companies. So great background for this. Her expertise is in guiding complex and large-scale change projects by using customized framework, the 5 C's of transition leadership. Her expertise centers on helping leaders refine and focus their strategies to maximize internal core capabilities and change agility. Wendy, welcome.
Hi, thank you very much.
Sure. If you want to share your screen and go ahead and get started when you're ready.
I'm going to share my screen. Hold on, share. And I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. And we're going to talk about improving change agility and unpacking that. But I think that change agility lives in the context of really what is going on in this crazy external environment we have. And there are a number of trends, one being globalization and the connection of people and the information that they can gather and how they work together is changing the way organizations think and behave. We know, many of us that are working in life sciences, med tech, that there's this always constant push and pull between value and cost, especially in medicine and treatment decisions. It's another external environmental trend. And that 2019 proves to be potentially the year of continued mergers and consolidations. Organizations are buying one another for vertical, horizontal, and big mergers have already been announced at the beginning of this year. BMS is buying Celgene, and there are many others that are underway. And that's changing the landscape as well. And when we think about the changing demographics, from baby boomers to millennials to Xers to Yers, that is shifting the way that organizations think. And technology, all of us, sitting on this webinar, a decade ago, we would not have had such a thing. So technology is enabling work and changing the way in which people interact in organizations. And the last big trend here is really around increased government regulations, reporting, and oversight. It is complex. So many of you should be very familiar with these trends. And what this means is organizations need to fundamentally revisit their strategy, and individuals need to start to behave differently. So organizations have been responding as a result of these environmental trends in a number of ways, right? They are constantly revisiting their strategic direction. Oftentimes, they will redesign or restructure. They'll sometimes come forth with cultural transformation initiatives. There's a lot of mergers we were just talking about. They may decide to buy another company. And oftentimes, there are leadership changes. But these types of large-scale change initiatives and organizational responses to the trends are often not successful. And we're going to spend a little bit of a minute talking about that. But there's really 5 primary reasons that they fail. And one is that they fail to create a simple and a compelling vision for organizational change. And oftentimes, individuals do not connect with the work that they're doing and what they believe to where the organization is going. And often organizations fail to properly plan and execute this type of initiative or change effort when they're responding. And the communications may be a one-time event and they think that it's done and adopted. So we started to think about what does it take to really make a change initiative successful? And how does change agility really help individuals and organizations navigate the change? And we know two things are important: effective planning and solid execution plans. And, sadly, when you look at the information, we know that almost 70% of large-scale change initiatives fail, and that only a small percentage are successful. And when we take the time to define success, success is really, did the organization realize its strategies and goals? And do they have processes in place to support that strategy? And most importantly, are people able to do their jobs in support of those changes identified? Okay. And what we know is after 25 years and hundreds of projects, we took some time to think about the critical factors as to what an organization would need to do to be successful, what those 30% look like. So I want to spend a couple minutes talking about that, and then really transition as to the role of agility in supporting that. So let's talk about the 30% that are successful. What do they do, and what do they do uniquely to navigate the changing landscape and as organizations try to adopt to that and adapt? The first thing is those leaders address the impact of change on the organizational level, not team and individual. So we've been talking about organizational responses and oftentimes the team, but really what does it mean to the individual and what kind of process do they need to go through? So organizations that are successful do that, number one. The second piece is they identify and proactively manage the business risks that jeopardize their business during whatever that transition or change process looks like. They put strategies in place, they think about the risks in terms of their people, and they get in front of that and get in front of that wave and curve. The third thing that they do is they monitor progress against plans and recalibrate quickly. Now, we know in medicine and med tech and pharma, when you're starting to incubate a new treatment therapy or you're launching a new product, you're paying attention and you're recalibrating and you're tracking. Organizations that successfully go through change do that also. And the last piece is they equip their leaders to lead the change by managing others through the transition, right? Change is something that's done to you on the outside, whereas transition is your process that you go through. And organizations that do that are very successful. And so how does this connect with agility? And what we know is that individuals and leaders need to possess those change agility capabilities in order to support change and guide others. So, agility. It's needed in a VUCA world. So what is agility? It's often, VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? We were talking about, for a few minutes, the organizational level and large-scale change. What's really critical here with agility at the individual level is that an individual possesses those agility skills. And agility is defined here is the power of moving quickly and easily and nimbly. What we know is that organizations that have high levels of agility in their individuals tend to outperform other organizations at almost 2-to-1. Okay, and this is really seen as critical when we talk about today's environment and moving forward. So I really want to unpack this and talk about it. So in our work for the last 25 years, we really spent time trying to understand what were the components of agility and how can individuals acquire that. So as you can see, we're using a surfing metaphor to demystify change agility. And there are three capabilities: balance, speed, and flexibility, which make up this totality known as change agility. So let's spend a minute talking about balance, okay? In the case of the surfer, balance is fundamental, and it's more than simply standing up on the board. Every movement that the surfer makes is informed by a deep understanding of his or her body, the environment, and their skill set. So to stay balanced, even in the most extreme conditions, surfers rely on their knowledge and skills that they've acquired over time. So change agile individuals really do the same thing. They maintain balance as they navigate complex environments, and they link their knowledge of the marketplace and the organization's evolution then to their role. Okay, so that's really what balance means. And we're going to spend a few minutes in the preceding slides talking about ways in which to improve that. The second component of change agility is speed. Okay? And to build and maintain speed, surfers focus on factors such as the positioning of the wave. They work with gravity and ensure that they don't go too fast and outrun the wave. All right? Change agile individuals can learn a lot from this. If you think about this VUCA environment, it's important that change agile individuals are strategic with their use of speed. Now, move too slow, you might miss an opportunity. Go too fast, you may precede the market. So speed's really about avoiding and removing the unnecessary that could slow you down while moving with intention and purpose. We're going to spend some time talking about intention and purpose. This is really critical that you go fast enough, but you're slow enough to make sure you observe, and then you can accelerate the speed. Now, the third component is flexibility. And flexibility in surfers may be overlooked by some, but it's a unique characteristic that enables their success. In surfing, flexibility should be strategic. If a surfer does not develop underlying flexibility in critical areas, other body parts may begin to move or overcompensate. Conversely, aimless stretching may cause some trouble. So at work, flexibility is demonstrated on how you flex your style and approach and the way in which you work with others. Now, as with the surfer, it's important in flexibility, you choose the area to stretch. It should be targeted with a key outcome in mind, so the person can really kind of work with that. So it's about flexibility, changing their style and changing their approach. So I want to pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions before we start to build this out a little further. Are there any questions anybody has about these three definitions at the highest level?
If you do have a question, I forgot to mention this earlier, but you can type it in the either in the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen or in chat. So the one question is, can all of these be learned or are they innate?
So I would argue that we have a set of capabilities that we can always further define, build. So I would argue that everybody can further build their skills. I don't think they're only innate. Are there any other questions?
None so far, but I do encourage folks to type in questions, and we'd love to have some discussion as well. So if I can open your microphone, if you let me know, you can type it in, or just raise your hand in the program, and we can get you live.
Okay, so I'm going to spend now some time talking about really balance. Okay. So if change is a continuous reality of the marketplace, we need to be steady on our feet. So the balance capability develops a style of thinking and leading to ensure individuals are grounded in rapidly changing times. So let's break down the components of balance that contribute to agility. So the first is really, if you possess a high level of balance, you self-manage through new situations and uncertainty. You don't sort of get thrown off the board. In dealing with the uncertainty of a situation, a person with agility looks to understand what the new organizational strategy or direction is, and then aligns their work with that direction. An agile individual anticipates risks from their vantage point and stays focused on continuing to meet those requirements, ensure that there's really no disruption, right? They're balanced. They're doing what they need to do, even as the swirl is happening. An agile individual also stays current on the external environment and the trends that may impact their work. And they also continue to develop their functional area of expertise. And lastly, an agile individual, as they're continuously changing and learning from the external environment, the impact on their role, they will align their work with their manager. So it's really helpful to think about, I don't know what happened here, as the surfboard is internal and your organization and your role. So, the ocean's external, the marketplace. So balanced individuals really ensure they have depth and knowledge of each. Okay? So let's talk about speed. You often hear the term speed kills. Right? Agile individuals have an element of speed. For them, speed is about avoiding and removing the unnecessary that could slow them down while moving with intention and purpose. It allows for iteration, innovation, while keeping an eye out for stability. Right? So speed in this paradigm of agility is manifested in some very specific ways. So one is an individual slows down to speed up to ensure quality when things are quickly, right? So they're not reacting, they're acting. They're taking a minute, taking a quick pause, looking at what's happening, getting an understanding, and then they're able to move a lot quicker. This component of change agility is also to examine the way in which work is done and find ways in which to simplify that. So I'm sure all of you have heard the term, we're doing agile. And doing agile for many organizations, for many of us who've been around for a while, goes back to the days of TQM, process improvement, quality. But the idea here is an agile individual who's possessing agility really is examining the way in which they're doing their work to find ways to simplify it so they can be more impactful and more effective. The other component here is a person who's agile in the speed component prioritizes their work. They take full ownership and bring a sense of urgency in the way they work and with whom they work. Okay? This person is always looking to be resilient and overcoming roadblocks. Right? So the speed behaviors are finding ways to improve work, streamline, prioritize, and being fully and wholly accountable. So I want to talk a little bit more about flexibility. And in today's work, much of the work that people do involves other partners. And we know that the ability to collaborate is a critical success factor for most organizations. And the agile individual values strategic collaboration. They recognize that much of the work that they do needs to be done in part with others. And one of the things that they do is they really leverage their network. They identify the individuals in their network that can help them do their work, connect them with others, navigate the organization. So that's the person that comes in, is collaborating with others, building relationships, and then creating their relationship map and network map, and they know when to draw on them as their work or demands occur. This individual also embraces iterative exploration of processes, right? They're the explorer. They're looking for ways to problem solve. They consider alternatives. They're willing to brainstorm and think about all different types of alternatives. They're not so stuck in their way that they're going down a path not open to anybody else. They are flexible in their thinking and the way in which they react to others. And the flexibility behaviors allows this individual to approach solutions really in a progressive, creative manner. So, in surfing, flexibility should be strategic, and it's an underlying capability that makes them successful. The same is true for change agile individuals. Okay, so flexibility is really a critical component. So I think I saw a question that came up. So let me see if I can address that. Oh, I don't know what happened. Nope, no question.
Yeah, it wasn't a question. It was just a comment in the question side.
Okay.
But I did encourage questions there. So hopefully.
All right. So are there any questions before we really talk about kind of polling, what being agile really helps you do, as we've talked about balance and speed and flexibility? Are any of those components that anybody wants some further understanding around?
I mean, I've written down some questions, but I want to be sure that you don't cover them before I ask. So
I'll keep going then.
All right.
So when we work with organizations, when we work with individuals, and we say, you really have to have agility, and it's helpful, and the why behind it. So let's talk about what it really allows you to do. Under balance, if you're agile, you can anticipate and react to the environment, to the marketplace, okay? You're not the person that gets thrown off their feet because the world's changing. You're anticipatory and you're reactive. You're also able, if you're in a leadership role, to deal with and lead others through change. I mean, one of the things that we say to our clients all the time is, might as well create a process and make sure that your organization has a method for adapting to change, and that you shore up the agility skills of your folks. Because if there's change today, I can guarantee it will be changed within the next year or so, right? The environment's changing very quickly. So if you're agile, you can deal with and lead others through that continuous change. I think that one of the hallmarks of agile individuals is they streamline and simplify in everything they do. The way they communicate, they look for processes, they work with others. So these are the things that they kind of do to always say, how can we be better so we can be better, faster, stronger, more nimble? Since so much of the work is collaborative in today's world, if you really are steeped in agility, you are absolutely solving problems through cross-functional collaboration, coordination, and communication. We use the term 3 C's. Those are critical. You have to be able to know when to collaborate and coordinate and communicate with others. And agile individuals do that. And lastly, they really foster innovation and creativity, right? The idea here is you tinker, you come up with new ideas, and you're open to those. So being agile allows for this fostering of innovation and creativity. So put together some simple ways to start to think about actions you can take to put agile behaviors in place for yourself. So I want to break them into the categories, and I really would love to engage some discussion and some other ideas around this. So when we think about balance, one of the things is that it's important to continue to hone and develop your business acumen skills. And when we talk about business acumen, we define acumen as really drawing hypotheses and insights based on information, and then from what you learn, then putting a plan, right? So an agile individual is connecting what they know, what they need to know, and really shoring up their acumen skills. Often we say to individuals, well, as your organization's going through change, you should really evaluate your role and how it's connecting to the strategy, and seeing if your role is changing at all, and if so, be able to really articulate that. And if you have changes to your role, that may indicate that you may need to further shore up learning in a particular area. So the concept of really balance here is to continue to strengthen your understanding and your skills around acumen so you can interact with the external environment and understand its impact on your role and what you need to do. When we think about speed, one of the things that I'll say to people is find a work process that's making you crazy, that you know is cumbersome, and figure out a way to streamline it. Now, you may engage others, but really start to examine the way work is happening and ways to streamline that so you can be more effective and efficient. I often will say to people, use a prioritization matrix, prioritize your work. So you really want to focus on things that are going to have high impact and value to the organization, but are feasible to do. So if you think about a 2x2 quadrant, if the work you're doing doesn't contribute and doesn't have impact, you probably shouldn't be spending any time doing that. But if it's going to be very impactful, then the consideration of feasibility comes in. If it's highly feasible, it's usually the first place that you want to go. But something that's going to have a high impact but be more difficult to do, you should still prioritize. Just recognize that it's going to take a little bit more time. And you may have more stage gates to walk through. And if you're trying to make sure that you're as agile as possible, I would say track your progress. Use measures of success, qualitative, quantitative, whatever works for you, to just see how you're doing with simplifying, streamlining, and prioritizing your work so you can be more impactful and quicker. And then in the area of flexibility, one of the things I say to everybody is think about who your stakeholders are within your network, who your network is, and really build that and map all of your contacts and where you collaborate with them and what people are really good in. So much work is done through others, and we don't have all the answers. So knowing who's in your network and where they can help you is really critical and can be impactful to your work. And think about new ways to do work and embrace new ideas from diverse sources. And I think it's opening your mind and being flexible to hear different perspectives, different ideas that help also shore up your agility skills. So at the highest level, these are some of the actions that you can take to build your agility. So what I'd like to do is answer the questions and have some dialogue around how you can shore up your agility skills and suggestions that you might have. And then I can talk to you a little bit about this agility assessment that we're continuing to do research on. So questions that you have? Jason, are you going to field them? Because I can't see them.
Yeah, I will. And please, if anyone, again, if you'd like to ask, let me know and I can open your mic. Ross asked, and I think you covered it in the last couple of slides, but how do you develop agility? And then I think a really good follow-up is how can it be folded into succession plans?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so ways in which you can develop agility. And I'm happy to have these slides available to you. It's really, if you start really at the balance, you want to make sure that your acumen skills are strong, that you continue to understand what's happening in your marketplace, you continue to explore those trends, and shore up your knowledge in that category. The other piece is really to improve your problem solving, collaborative skills. But agility is about flexing, right? So exploring, tinkering, thinking about how you can be more impactful. So those are some ideas and suggestions on how you could build agility skills. Now, the question that you just asked was around how does this link to succession planning and talent planning? And it's interesting. We just finished completing a large body of work for one of our pharmaceutical clients. And we were looking to identify what were the critical leadership competencies that would be part of their talent development process. And it was interesting, executing with discipline, being able to ideate from the outside and translate strategy all seen as important. But agility was seen as one of the most critical characteristics to ensure that their leaders had that, because the environment changes all the time. And a solid leader needs to be able to take those insights, potentially pivot, and then be able to provide direction. So we're seeing more and more in our work that organizations are assessing agility as a critical capability for their future leaders.
Great, thank you. This is one that I had thought of as well, but Dario asked, what advice do you have to manage a boss to manage up? Right? So you have a boss that's not very agile. How do you do that? How do you manage up?
So delicately, with some flexibility. Oftentimes, you may have a boss that's not open to ideas, not open to changing processes. And we often will provide the direction that to provide evidence, right? Find the circumstances in which maybe it's a new idea that you want to bring forth, or it's a new process that you found a way to streamline. I think you build the business case and you talk to them about what it is, why it matters, how this will be impacted, the benefits to them. And but what I would say is some people that are totally inflexible, it is sometimes challenging to move the needle. So you can also use your collaborative partners who may if they share your point of view, to kind of work to convince that boss as you're managing up.
Great. One more. How far ahead of a big change initiative should we be developing our agility?
You should have already been doing it as part of your core curriculum offering. If you think about, people talk about having strategic, ability, strategic thinking skills, and they talk about having skills around collaboration or coaching and leading. I'm going to argue that agility is today's new normal, and you should be training to it. People should be practicing it. But what I would say is if you are anticipating a large-scale change initiative, you would better equip those leaders to have the agility as well as other skills to lead others through change, right? If we know that two critical success factors for any large-scale change is having a plan and having leaders the ability to guide others, those leaders have got to be set, and agility is a component they need to have as well.
Great. So we have three more. I do have a question. I don't know which slide it was, but it's a couple of slides ago. You talked about collaborate, coordinate, and communicate.
Yeah.
This is interesting because in my first career in my life, I worked on Capitol Hill in Washington, and when writing legislation, those three terms were vital. I mean, do you coordinate with an agency or with a state? Do you collaborate? Can you describe what these three are and the differences?
Sure. We use the term 3 C's, and first is collaborating is the art of kind of working with someone. So who do you need to collaborate with? Who do you need to connect to in which to get work done? So a lot of our work is done in pharma. You have customer-facing roles. You might have a sales rep. You might have an access leader. You might have a medical person. Or, think about a hospital in which you're talking to somebody in pharmacy and you're working with somebody in IT and you're working with nursing or whatever. You have got to collaborate with others in which to do work. Okay, so that's really one part of the C, to collaborate. The coordination piece is, let me ask you a question before I define coordination. How many times have you been surprised in your job that something was being rolled out and nobody even bothered to let you know, so lack of communication, but your group was impacted and they didn't coordinate with you, okay? It happens way too often. So coordination is finding out what are the moving parts and pieces that I need to kind of pull together to ensure that we do this in an artful way. And the communication is just that. I mean, it takes 6 times for a message to be understood or received, right? Before somebody gets it. And work, when people are moving so quickly, they often fail either to collaborate because they're just plowing ahead. They often, if they even are collaborating to come up with a solution, forget who all the other people are, so they may not coordinate and people are stepping on each other's toes or they get blindsided. Or worse, lastly, that they communicate once and they think that everybody gets it and they didn't hear the message. So complex problem solving, customer facing teams, medical teams, innovation teams really need to possess these 3 pieces. I would say this is a critical success factor that helps you in terms of how you do your work.
All right, so we have a couple questions here on the team, so I'll ask these together. How do you encourage agility within a large team? You know, it's a lot of this self-development, right? You can see how I can become more agile, but what are the techniques you can recommend to bring the entire team's agility up?
So I think the way in which you do that is a lot of times the examination of the way the team is working and what they need to be doing. So if we go back to this idea of collaboration, ideation, working with others, I mean, when we work with organizations, we'll create these simple, we call them leader-led learning, but these simple ways that they can have a meeting together and work through a problem and then engage everybody. So they start to see where they can either problem solve more effectively, streamline a process, come up with an innovative idea on which to innovative way to do something. So you're collectively working through the pieces of agility that help. So you're working agility at the individual level to develop, but then as a team, you're usually tackling processes or problems to solve. And we will often say to teams, you're going to put some practice in some place. If you're getting bogged down, you need to call it. So you help to shape the behavior of the team to be a little bit more flexible and agile.
Yeah, and that's a great answer. And maybe this is kind of the follow-up is, you know, what does a change agility program look like? How do you get started? You know, how do you assess it and get going? And maybe that's some of it. You just start.
You start. So
Yeah.
assessment. If you email me, I'll send you a copy. You know, we've spent some time. We're building, because of all the research we've done in the last 25 years, we want to get a good data set to understand how these factors of balance, speed, and flexibility come together. But you can assess your agility skills. So I'm happy to share this assessment. Just email me, I'll send you a copy. But how you can learn it is a lot by doing. There are training programs available. I mean, we actually train at Change Agility, but I think there's got to be some support for an individual an individual's got to be committed to changing the way in which they work and their work practices. But there are absolute ways in which you can train these capabilities. A lot of leadership programs now are teaching agility. We have a program, balance, speed, and flexibility. So there are ways people can do it individually. You can do it in group settings, and whole organizations are going through agile methodology to improve the way in which they work and change reporting and everything else along those lines. So agility lives on those 3 levels.
Great. Another really great question from Ross. Adaptive learning approaches depend on the learner having self-insight and the ability to ask questions. How can you link those two? How do you link those two?
Oh, that's spot on. So, you're adaptive, right? You're linking learning, you're asking questions. Agile individuals are doing the same thing, right? An agile individual should be an adaptive learner. I mean, a lot of times organizations will use the term learning agility, right? Are you able to learn? Are you able to learn quickly? Are you able to learn new things? So, I see an adaptive learner as somebody that possesses components of agility.
Great. And then the last one here in the chat are, what are ways to reward and acknowledge agility to make it part of the culture?
I think that the same way, if you are an organization that recognizes, if you've seen somebody who's come up with an innovative idea, somebody's tinkered and figured out something differently, they've streamlined a process, they've shored up acumen, I think you can recognize them like you would recognize somebody if they're driving sales results or coming out with new medicines. It's sort of, that they're doing this. But I would make sure that you're clear and intentional about that being that they're working differently, they're working smarter, faster, they're collaborating more. But the ways are really those intangibles, the attaboys. Or some organizations will say, if you can come up with a new process, they'll do, an agility award. So lots of ways to have some fun with this.
Great. Those are all the type questions, and really those covered a lot of what I was going to ask as well. And I'll just, Wendy, so this is the most questions we've had from the audience. So I think it was a really engaging webinar for sure. I'll give you a chance. Any last thoughts? Anything that you think, oh gosh, I should have covered that, and then we'll see if any last questions come in.
What I would say is that this is one area, we know that the environment's going to continue to shift. Organizations are going to continue to respond, right? If you want to be successful and adaptive as the world continues to change, I think honing those agility skills for yourself personally are critical. And as a leader, to have that and demonstrate those agility and train and teach others is critical to the organization's success. So I'm really saying when we think about the new leadership paradigm and critical skills, agility is one of them. So I would encourage you to look for ways to tinker, to explore, to ideate, and try to improve your work environment for yourself and for others. What I'd say is, if you'd like, please email me. You want any questions? On our website, we actually have the article that we published last year on balance, speed, and flexibility. But work for yourself, work with your individuals, work with your teams, leaders, and just continue to flex because the world's going to change and you don't want to get thrown by it. So those would be really my parting words. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or email me if you had a situation you want to talk about. Happy to do that as well. But really, this is a critical capability moving forward.
Great, Wendy, thank you very, very much. This was tremendous, and we will have this. This is being recorded, so we'll get this up online here this afternoon. And so if you want to go back and rewatch it, and if you didn't see it and you're watching it and recording now, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all very much, Wendy.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.